Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it all seems so very long ago as we come together here today to commemorate Operation Veritable for the 75th time. The village of Rubriek is almost unrecognizably changed now. Even this very original looking medieval church was largely rebuilt after the war. And it is a very long time ago, since war and battle swept over and displaced our community. The day before yesterday, we buried the last man in our municipality that saw active duty in World War II, Jan Klusters. He was just over 100 years old. And yet, as the last people that witnessed the atrocities of the war fall away, we, their children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, keep coming together to commemorate. 75 years ago saw the start of Operation Veritable. It's a very positive and optimistic sounding name, suggesting swift, effective action and quick results. Perhaps its German name, the Schlacht im Reichswald, sums up the situation more appropriately. The Allied advance towards Germany was intended as a prelude to our freedom, but it ended up being the biggest Allied attack since Normandy. Operation Veritable was an immense logistical operation with a narrow line of attack between Wieler and Mook, with Rubriek somewhere in the middle. You all know that we were expected to go to the Canadian War Cemetery later on, which we're not going to do because of the impending storm Kiara. How regrettable that is, there is also something very appropriate about this, I think. The storm reminds us of the realities of Operation Veritable, which also could not be planned and managed entirely, but took on a life of its own and raged through these lands, spreading chaos and destruction. Of course, this was not the first time this area saw military action. Ever since Operation Market Garden, there had been the constant arrival of men and materials, the digging of many kilometers of trenches, and the toing and froing of the ever-changing positions of both the Allied forces and the Germans. Mass flooding, looting, fire and destruction had changed the villages beyond recognition. When troops broke through and finally liberated this part of the country, there was nobody here to welcome and thank them. All villages to the southeast of Nijmegen had long since been evacuated. What the troops did encounter was a veritable war zone, and we only have to look at the pictures just to appreciate that. A desolate no man's land that looked gloomy enough in the daytime and became positively frightening at night, with the great dark Reichswald lurking menacingly to the east. Surviving soldiers of the battle described the Reichswald as a slaughterhouse. The trees and buildings were completely and indiscriminately destroyed. It ultimately proved to be a crucial battle for the liberation of the Netherlands, but it was a battle that came at an extremely high price. 23,000 Allied soldiers and 38,000 German soldiers lost their lives. Those are the realities of war. This was what liberation looked like here. No sunny streets lined with happy people cheering on their equally happy liberators. It was carnage, death, and desolation. We're not here today to commemorate an easy victory. It wasn't easy at all. We gratefully acknowledge the ultimate sacrifice that so many brave young men from across the seas were willing to make. We can only appreciate the true worth of freedom when we remember at what enormous price it has had to be bought. And now, 75 years have passed. The liberated lands are still free. War has never returned. Peace and prosperity are the natural state once more. Children are born and have grown old in freedom. We have not forgotten, though, and the bonds of gratitude and friendship that were forged in the war have held and are holding still. I'm very happy the embassies of the former Allied powers have sent their representatives today. 75 years is a long time. Long enough to also remember the bonds of kinship and friendship many centuries old that bind us to our former enemy. As unthinkable as it once must have seemed, without erasing our memories, time has managed to heal these very deep wounds. And as we have lived and worked together again for many decades now, so we can also remember together. Freedom is not an heirloom that can be taken for granted. If we want to pass it on to those that come after us, if we fully want to appreciate the value of our hard-fought-for and restored freedom, it requires positive action from each and every one of us, every day. Thank you for your attention.